selection weeds out the genes that do not work in certain environments. So as it weeds out the genes from certain creatures or kinds, it gets them to fit or define to fit very well in that environment. But those creatures, what we would call in farming, would be more of a purebred. When you're dealing with purebreds, they have a reduction of genetic diversity. When you reproduce the same purebred with the same purebred, you always get that purebred. You don't get anything else. Because you actually got rid of all the other genes that produce other types of dogs. Are you all with me? Yes. Okay, I work with this all the time. I'm on the farm. So none of this is nothing new. I work with it. It was all demonstratable. What was so exciting is what I was working with was already proclaimed in Genesis 6,000 years ago. That's what got me so excited. Yes. Now, we're talking about, when we take a look at this information, we do not observe evolution. Now the evolution they're talking about here is macroevolution. We have never seen one kind of creature change into a completely different kind of creature, have we? What do bacteria always change into? Bacteria. They never change into anything else. We know that science. We've been just studying that for decades. And we're going to talk more about that. Yes, bacteria always do. All bacteria do is be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. That's all they do. Everything uses biblical principles because that's how they've been programmed. Yes. What about missing links? You've heard of missing links, right? Transitional forms, creatures that are half this and half that. According to the Bible, there are no missing links. You will never find missing links. Because everything reproduces after their own kind. So what are they finding out there in the fossil record? Well, the Bible tells us what they will find, if you understand Genesis. But because they don't understand Genesis, they make up some blunders in these missing links. All right, we'll take a look at it. The question is, what is a missing link? Well, we have spoons and we have forks. That means there has to be something missing between a spoon and a fork for this to evolve into that. Are you all with me? Have we found the missing links? Yeah, we have. We got forks. You put them in there, they're half spoon and half fork. That's the missing link. Yeah. Well, where did rats come from? Well, I was taught in college and high school rats came from lizards. Yeah, so you got a lizard-like creature here, and that's supposed to evolve into a rat. Well, we have lizards today. We have lizards in the fossil record. We have rats today. Guess what we have in the fossil record? Rats. All these missing links are supposed to be half lizard and half rat. Yes. Well, let's look at missing links. Here we have a recently discovered. Did you know they have discovered a missing link? I'm wrong after all. I'll show you a missing link. There's a classical missing link. Right there, there's a missing link. That birds came from reptiles. What are you laughing at? You go to museums, you'll see the same thing. You'll see birds that have a reptile head on it. Interesting. You go to museums and say, oh, that's all kind of scientific. Well, do they find these creatures looking just like that? They just find a bottle of bones that are pretty badly decayed. No, people laugh at this. When I show this picture, people laugh at this. You know why people laugh at this? Because they know missing links don't exist. Deep down inside, people know missing links don't exist. This is just Photoshop. What's this? Artwork. Same thing. What you see in museums is a lot of artwork, but artwork is not science, is it? We're going to go into more detail on this. Well, but they say creatures are similar. A man has a hand similar to that of a dog, which is similar to that of a hand of a monkey, which is similar to that of a leg or a wing of a bat. That means they must have similarities. That means we almost go back to a common ancestor. That's what I was taught, homology. Well, this whole chart is based on similar characteristics. Why do they put monkeys up by man? Why don't they put fish up by man and put monkeys down here? Because we have more similarities with who? Or what? Monkeys. This chart is all built on similar characteristics. Well, let's take a look at similar characteristics. Do you know we have similar characteristics with animals? Do you know we have similar characteristics with plants? Is it because we all go back to a common ancestor? Is that why we have similar characteristics? No, there's a far more scientific reason why we have similar characteristics. Here we have 3 pieces of furniture. I don't know if can we film these lights here maybe? Yeah, thank you. You need to see these 3 pieces of furniture. Yes, there we go. Thank you. This piece of furniture is very simple. This piece of furniture is a little more complex. This piece of furniture is highly complex. Now they all have similar characteristics. These 2 here have doors. These 2 here have drawers. And all 3 of them have shelves. They all have similar characteristics. That means they must come from a common ancestor, right? Did that wood evolve in this piece of furniture, then evolve in this one, then finally into that highly complex piece of furniture? Is that what they have in common? What do they have in common? A common designer. Yes. You have a common designer who takes the basic building blocks of making furniture and making all kinds of different furniture. That's me just a few days ago. You don't recognize me? Well, there's Abby. That's a long time ago. She's already got a little boy about her size. I build furniture for a hobby. I draw my own blueprints when I build my furniture. With a few changes of blueprints, guess what you get? Different pieces of furniture. It's exactly what we see in biology. We see no evidence of a common ancestor at all. What we see is a common designer taking the basic building blocks of life and making a few changes, getting all kinds of different creatures to adapt them into the environment he wants to place them in. Yes. We have giant pandas and red pandas. At one time, they thought giant pandas and red pandas were supposed to be related. They both had an extra thumb, they had a V-shaped jaw, they had similar teeth, they had similar skull. They must be related because they have similarities. Then they studied DNA and they discovered they're not related at all. These are related to bears and these are related to raccoons. If you look at similar characteristics, can you make a lot of mistakes? Yeah, lots of mistakes. They're only dealing with bones. A thumb has a bone, a V-shaped jaw, that's a bone. Similar teeth, that's kind of a bone structure, similar skull. You know when we look at bones, there's not a lot of information there, we're going to talk about that. When they look at the soft tissue, like the DNA and so on, the soft tissue tells them they're not even related. We're going to talk more about that. Very important information. Now, similarities in bones and teeth, there's not a lot of information there, but the soft anatomy, they are not related. This shows they're related, this shows they're not related. Interesting. Then we have the platypus. I think that creature was made specifically for the evolutionary philosophy. This creature has a bill like a duck, has a tail like a beaver, has feet like an otter, has hair like a bear, has claws like a reptile, has days like a turtle, it has furs like a rooster. The question is, what is this creature evolving from, and what is it evolving into? It's a mosaic creature. It's a strange creature. This is from Discover magazine, evolutionary magazine. The platypus genome is a mashup. Take a close at it. This creature has reptilian genes, avian or bird genes, and mammal genes. When I was studying about the platypus, as far as I know, they didn't evolve from birds. So what are they doing with bird genes? If they didn't come from birds. Interesting. No, that didn't fit with it, what I was taught in evolution. But did we go on? The platypus, it looks like a car that was built on Friday. They just put the parts they had left to put it together. It's like God was running out of time on day 6. We spent too much time, God. So just like you grab a bunch of parts from all these different creatures and put them together. Phew, there's the platypus. Just in time. We got to make man now. That's what it looks like. You're a platypus. You got genes that are identical to zebrafish. You got genes that are identical to plant bananas. Did you know 50% of your genes are banana genes? How many of you are bananas? We're not even going to go to the nuts. We'll leave the nuts out of this. That might explain a few things. You see what I mean? What we see in the DNA is like this big warehouse of all these different genes to make all the different organisms in the world. Guy comes in there, he's going to make a bacteria. He takes some genes here, genes here, genes here, put them together, there's a bacteria. He's going to make a dog, he takes genes from all over, makes dogs. He's going to make a man, he takes some monkey genes, he takes some rat genes, he takes some other genes, and put them together, there's a human being. Isn't that interesting? We don't see evidence of a common ancestor at all. We see evidence of a common designer. We see that all the time. All cars are pretty similar, aren't they? Did one car evolve from another car? No, they got different blueprints. You can't go from one car to another car, otherwise you've got to change everything. I like to work on vehicles. With my kids, I have to take care of roughly 9 vehicles. Is that a job? Yes, that's a job. Yeah. They're not getting better, people. Vehicles are breaking down. I can tell you that, yes. But you go to evolutionary museums, they'll show you dinosaurs evolving into birds. Have they actually observed this? No, this has never been observed. What do we call this? It's all artwork. Science doesn't deal with artwork. Yes. Getting under a dinosaur's skin. Let's take a look at dinosaurs. Paleontologists designate dinosaur species by bones alone. Because when you look into the fossils, guess what you mostly find? Bones. Not always. Now we have all kinds of soft tissue, and when we found the soft tissue, birds and dinosaurs, they're not related at all. But many modern animal species, those are animal species today, are defined by their skin or feathers and cannot be distinguished solely by their bones. We have all kinds of creatures living today. If you look at their bone structures, they look very, very similar. But on their soft tissue, they are very, very different. We don't look at bones to distinguish different species today, but they look in the fossil record. Oh, they can do. You see where I'm at? Wow. Now, most of the time they find just the bones turning to stone. But once in a while we find soft tissue. This is one of the dinosaurs that were supposed to evolve into birds. But in this case, they found the soft tissue. The breathing mechanism of this creature is similar to that of modern crocodiles and completely different from that of birds. It goes on. The windpipe and the colon, basically, it didn't have anything to do with birds. Completely different. Here was another one. This one right here. This is supposed to be one of the missing links to lead to birds. They discovered the internal organs. They discovered the internal organs were completely different than birds, but similar to that of crocodiles. You've heard all this information, right? They teach this to you, right? Why don't they reveal this information to you? If they really want to promote science, wouldn't they tell you this? Doesn't science deal with knowledge and so on? I find that I was never taught this information. I was only taught what they wanted to teach me. Because they want me to think their thoughts. They want me to think their way. I decided I'm not going to think their way. I'm going to think God's way. It's much better than their way. We see their way. I've been to Russia. I know the outcome of their thoughts. It's a disaster. We don't want to go there. I'm fearful of this country because they want to go that way. It's a disaster. We know it's a disaster. Now, look at the bone structure of birds. Birds have fixed femurs. They have them so their lungs don't collapse. Dinosaurs do not. So there's a lot of differences between dinosaurs and birds. Yes. This one here, well, some of these bird or some of these missing links, half bird, half dinosaur, are supposed to have protofeathers. Have you heard about that? Well, this is from Alan Finuccia. He's an evolutionist. The hair-like filaments that accompany some fossils, that's these right here, come from beneath the skin. Where do you find feathers? Below the skin or above the skin? I used to farm. I used to raise chickens. I know where the feathers are at. They're not below the skin, they're above the skin. I can duplicate the effect of skinning the tail of a modern lizard. Now, it's probably just collagen fossilizing, bacteria. I was in a museum in Houston, Texas. I saw a dinosaur that had the same filaments on its fossils, and this dinosaur did not evolve into birds. It was a sauropod. Whoa, that's a big problem. So a lot of this is just vain imaginations. When we take a look at living creatures, we see variation in the theme. We see all these similarities. Why? Because of a common designer with a common design. We see that all the time. Yes. Well, we won't go into that. We'll jump over that. Yeah. But going on here, we have Ida. Ida was supposed to be a missing link. This is supposed to be your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. According to the Bible, there are no missing links. They said it was a missing link. But using the information from the Bible, right away we can tell that was false. It was not a missing link. Because the Bible says there's no missing links. So using this superior information, we can tell them they are wrong. And guess what? They were wrong. All they found was a variation of a lemur. Now, if these genes of these creatures did not go on board the ark, what happened to these variations of lemurs? They went extinct. You know what we find in the fossil record? We just find variations of lemurs, and some of those went extinct because the genes were lost during the flood or shortly after the flood. You won't find them today because the genes are lost. Are you all with me here? Well, the Bible predicts you will find variations of monkeys, you will find variations of humans, you will find variations of lemurs. Some of these have gone extinct, some of the genes have been lost, so we won't see them today. That's what you will find. And guess what they find? They find variations of lemurs. That's all it was. Artie, supposed to be your great-great-grandmother. Well, that can't be true because there's no missing links. Well, it turns out she's basically a monkey. There's a variation of monkey that's been lost. Lost the genes. That's all it was. No. Coelacanths. Coelacanths were supposed to be creatures that are half fish and half amphibian. When they looked at the fossil record, they had all these big stories, swimming in shallow seas, walking on land, flippers evolving into legs, keels evolving into lungs. When they found that creature alive, they were 100% wrong. It was a complete blunder. If they were using the Bible, they would say, oh, it's just a strange fish. And it is. It's a strange fish. But guess what it is? It's a strange fish. Some kinds have probably gone extinct because of the flood and shortly after the flood. Then there's pictolate. This is another one of those half fish and half amphibian. They said, oh, missing link. Came up with all kinds of stories, and then they found fossils of amphibians below this strange fish. So can this creature be a missing link? No, it can't be. Amphibians were already here before this creature was. Well, they're all basically made on the same day or a couple of days. Are you all with me here? Using the information in Scripture, we can condemn false knowledge. And this is all false knowledge so far. Platypus, can you imagine what they would say if they found that fossilized? Wow, they'd come up with all kinds of stories. Then we have Neanderthal man. Caveman. That's what they thought Neanderthals looked like at one time? That was all art. Did they find Neanderthal man looking just like that in the cave? Is that what they found? No. You know, hunched over, lifting his hammer, not looking very bright, right? It's all artwork. There's no science here at all. There's no science. That's just baby imagination. That's all it is. With new research, they discovered this is probably what the Neanderthal man looked like. Straighten them up, put them in suit and tie, comb his hair, virtually go on recognizing the crowd of people. I don't know if you've been realizing it, but I like to study human genetics. I look at human genes. Well, I don't really look at genes. I look at the outcome of human genes. I look for Neanderthals. I've been studying your skulls. Did you know that? I've been looking at your skulls. Now, don't look at your friend or spouse and say, did I marry a Neanderthal or not? If you look around, you will find Neanderthals. They are there. They're not very many. I've seen people with sloping foreheads. I've seen people with bigger eyebrow ridges. I've seen people with big jaws. Just because you have a big jaw or a sloping forehead or a big eyebrow, does that mean you're not quite human? You know, if you go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., go to where the Nazis, they would measure jaws to see if they were evolved or not. Wow. The whole thing of Nazi Germany is all built on evolution. If you want to know the outcome of evolution, study Nazi Germany. They lived it. And it's horrible. What made me so upset is when I went through the Holocaust Museum, I came out of there upset because they never got to the root of the cause of what caused that. They never did. I was so sad. Because if you don't get to the root of the cause, history will repeat itself. And is it repeating itself? It is. It's repeating itself. Wow. And I've seen people with jaws that go in like this. Does that mean a person who has a jaw like this is more evolved than my jaw? No, it's just God has a good sense of humor. He comes up with all different kinds of genes for humans. No. So this is all good. Did you know actually the skull of a Neanderthal is larger than modern human skulls? Do you know their brains were also larger? And according to recent research and studies on humans, you know our brains are not getting better or bigger. Our brains are actually getting smaller. They are. We peaked out with the Neanderthals, and now we're on the downhill slide. Interesting. Yeah. Well, this is a book by Michael Denton. Evolution, a Theory in Crisis. Now, he is not a creationist. He's an evolutionist. This is from his book. He's got a new book out. I need to read a new book. Just a continuation of this one. In his book here, The Systematic Stasis and Biological Affinity. What's affinity? Affinity is, in biology, a relationship or a resemblance in structure between species that suggests a common origin. Basically, looking at similarities and trying to get a common origin, common ancestor. You all with me here? He goes on. Affinity of a fossil organism is far more difficult to establish than in the case of a living form. Why is this more difficult than this? And can never be established with any certain degree of certainty. Why? Why can you not really get any relationship with fossils of any degree of certainty? Well, it's because, to begin with, 99% of the biology of any organism resides in the soft anatomy. Basically, if you had a whole skeleton of a creature, that's only 1%. There's not a lot of information. 1%? That's 1 cent on a dollar. What would you sooner have half, 99 cents or 1 cent. Only when they have a whole skeleton, all the information they have to work with is 1%. Is that a lot of information? With Lucy, with new research, she's only had about 28% of 1%. She only had 28% of a skeleton. 28%, that's all they're working with, 28% of the skeleton. That means they're only working with basically 0.28%. That's not a lot of information. So where's all this information come about that Lucy's a missing link? It's not from the science, it's from their speculation. Everything about Lucy is basically mostly speculation. Because where's the information? It's in the soft. What makes you unique is in the soft tissue. You don't have a lot of that with bones, do you? Are you taught this stuff? You're not. If you're really pushing science, this is what you push. Science deals with knowledge, does it not? That's what I deal with. I deal with knowledge, observational evidence, and so on. I don't deal with speculation. That's not science. Well, Lucy, did you know some of the vertebrates they found with Lucy, they now think are baboon vertebrates? It's from a different creature. The knee, actually, they were using to support that, actually from a human. Basically put humans and baboons and some strange monkey that went extinct, and they'd say that's your ancestor. Lucy's actually been debunked. She's not your great-great-great-grandmother anymore. According to new science, she's out some dead-end branch over there. Wow. Yeah. There is not enough observational evidence in the fossil record to establish Lucy as a missing link. Scientists do not have evidence if he or she, her species, left any offspring. Do we know that she left offspring? Actually, with new research, it's probably not a she, it's a he. Wow. Yes, the only way they thought it was a she because it was very small. Because if it was a he, it wouldn't fit at all in the evolutionary process. So they thought, well, it has to be a female. Clip structure says, well, it probably could have offspring. They may have just gone extinct like so many species today. So we see species going extinct all the time. They're not evolving into something else. We never see something evolving into something else. Interesting. This is an evolutionary book. You see all these solid bars. You see all these solid bars. These are distinct variations, or not variations, but different kinds of birds. You have all these dotted lines, connect all these birds to this bird here. Well, the question is, what do the solid lines mean, and what do the dotted lines mean? Well, with signing a contract or reading evolutionary books, you always have to read the small print. It's very important. This is what they say. The solid bars show the known fossil record of a group. So these are all known fossils. These are observational. All these different kinds of birds. What are the dotted lines? The dotted lines denote the possible. Do you see that possible evolutionary relationship between groups? All these dotted lines are put there for your viewing enjoyment only. This is all artwork. We see all just distinct kinds. All this is, they don't find. If evolution is true, they should find millions and millions of missing links. Millions and billions of them. They can't find one good one. This is another one. This one's on dinosaurs. The evolution of dinosaurs. Got all these red bars. What do the white ones mean? Well, you look right down here. The tinted, the red ones, they show us, indicate solid fossil evidence. This is solid fossil evidence. What's the white stuff? That is no solid fossil evidence. Just what? Imagination. I don't deal with imagination. I deal with science. Look at this. Through Scripture, this is what we've just come together with Scripture. You got these solid trees here with branches, so the creatures can adapt to different environments. Does this not look like that? What we find in the Bible, what we find in science, goes totally together. Fits together perfectly. Eliminate all this non-scientific stuff as we go on. God created everything perfect. But after the fall of Adam, there would be a corruption of genetic information caused by mutations. God does everything perfect, does he not? So the creatures would be perfect, and now we're on a downhill slide. We're genetically falling apart. I get that from Genesis chapter 3. Guess what we come across with science? Well, what do we see? There's a deterioration and or loss of organs and other body parts over time. Are we seeing that? Are we having a deterioration of body parts because of loss of genetic information? Yeah, we are. This is what we call, through mutations, we have a gene depletion. Mutations cause gene depletion, or genetic information being lost. See, according to evolution, we all came from goo. This goo is going to evolve into mankind. We've got to have an explosion of new genetic information to make brains, to make skulls, to make bones, to make lungs, so on. Are you all with me here? Because bacteria doesn't have any of this. So where's that going to come from? It's got to be an increase of new genetic information through mutations, and it's also have to duplicate genes so they can mutate to make new genetic information. Just getting more genes is not very good. Now, we actually have more than, right now I have 8 born grandchildren right now. In a few months I'm going to have 10. I can't wait. But actually I have more than that. I have some in heaven. I've got a granddaughter that died at birth. She had trisomy 18. Any of you know familiar with trisomy 18? It's not good. She's had too many number 18 chromosomes. Having more genes is not good. It messes up the system. Down syndrome is, I think, trisomy 21 or 13. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think cleft palate is trisomy something too, if I remember right. So getting new genes is not good. But you need more genes so they can mutate to get more information. Are you with me? People die when they have too many chromosomes. My daughter died. We know more chromosomes are not good. Wow. Yeah. Well, let's take a look at mutations. This is all false. Mutations don't come up and make new genetic information. What do mutations do? We all know this. Duplication of genetic information, loss of genetic information, deregulation of genetic information. They cause aging. Yes. Fruit flies. They did all kinds of experiments with fruit flies. They bombarded them with chemicals and radiation. They got tens of thousands of mutations. They got fruit flies with curved wings. They got fruit flies with no wings. They got fruit flies with 2 pairs of wings, but these fruit flies couldn't fly. The best fruit fly was the fruit fly that didn't have any of the mutations. But guess what they always got? Fruit flies. They never changed anything else. Fruit flies staying fruit flies is not evolution, is it? Actually, what they found is devolution. They were getting worse as they increased in mutations. Yes. Mutations are rare, and they are. Most mutations are harmful or neutral. Yes, but it's the beneficial mutations are the raw material for natural selection. Are you all grasping that? Mutations are bad, but they're supposed to what? Make us better. Does that make sense? No. Mutations cause a loss of genetic information. They never cause an increase in genetic information. It's always a loss. You know, it's like this steer. He has 5 legs. He's got 4 on the ground, 1 on his back. Is that a better steer? Can he run faster with 5 legs instead of 4? There's a duplication of genetic information. It's best for the farmer. He's got another chunk of beef to sell at the market now. And then this one's a loss of genetic information. It's called TNR. Now we need to take this rooster and pull all the feathers off of it. That's the way he hatched from the egg. Now is that a good mutation? For the poultry farmer it is. They're raising these chickens, so now they don't have to pluck them. But they have to take very good care of them, otherwise they die. Interesting. They call them TNR. Why do they call them TNR? Stands for totally naked rooster. And then this bird has the opposite problem. That's a bird. His feathers keep growing. He's got a deregulation mutation. They just keep growing and growing. No, this is the mutant feathers, and these are the normal feathers. Is that good for birds? Just get feathers growing? No, not at all. Blind cave. I was taught in college blind cavefish is excellent evidence of evolution. Well, let's take a look at it. Here's the blind cavefish, and this is the cousin of the blind cavefish. This one has eyes, this one doesn't. Well, what's the deal? Well, there's a mutation on the blind cavefish. It had a mutation on where it makes its eyes, on the genes where it makes eyes. So when this fish is developing in the egg, fish egg, it comes to a point where it's got to develop the eye. The lens is supposed to develop. It's lost the genetic information to make the lens of the eye. So the whole eye process shuts down because it's lost the eye lens. So it just scar tissue goes over the eye. Are you all with me? But in a cave where there's no light, do you need eyes? No. Actually, this is a beneficial. I'm not against beneficial mutations. We do see that. But they don't make things better. In a cave, if he bumps, you can watch these cavefish, they'll bump into rocks. And they bump into a rock and with the scar tissue that protects the eye. But if this fish was in the cave, getting its eye cut, bacteria could get in and could die. So in a cave, there's no light. This is a beneficial mutation. But is it a better fish? No, it's lost genetic information. You take this fish and put it in this fish's environment, this fish is shark bait. It doesn't know where to hide, can't see the predators, anything like that. Are you with me here? actually what we see is a loss of genetic information. It's not getting new genetic information, it's losing it. This is what we call devolution. It is devolving. They got to explain how those eyes got there in the first place, and they don't have an explanation scientifically. We're not getting this way, we're going this way. If you lose too many body parts, what's going to happen to a creature? The eyes, the head. Doesn't last very long, do you, when you start losing too many body parts? This is the opposite of evolution. This is devolution. It's getting worse. We know that scientifically. We are genetically falling apart. We know that. Yes. What do mutations cause? Birth defects. We know that. I worked with that on the farm. It causes cancer. We know that. Diseases. I worked with that on the farm. Death. Yeah. I work with aging. Yeah. I'm experiencing it. But aging is not always so bad. You're probably saying, what? The older I get, the more grandchildren I get. It's a win-win situation, in my viewpoint. Yeah. But things just don't work as well. Yes. Genetic entropy. Highly recommend this book if you're into genetics. Entropy means disorder. Basically, going through this information, the primary axiom of Darwinian evolution is evolution proceeds by random mutations and natural selection. Well, if we go through that, mutational entropy, that's disorder, appears to be so strong within large genomes that selection cannot reverse it. What does that mean? We're going into extinction, people. If we continue on, our genes are going to be so bad, we're going to have more diseases, more problems, more defects, so on. We're headed for extinction. Unless something is done, things are going to get worse. Because every generation is having more and more mutations. It's called a genetic load. It's not good news. Yeah, so it goes on. Mutations, selection cannot even stop the loss of genetic information, let alone create a genome. We can't even stop our genes from falling apart. Actually, your genes know mutations are bad. You've got mechanisms on your genetic information to correct mutations. Because we know mutations are bad. Our body knows mutations are bad. If that mechanism breaks down, you come down with cancer. Natural selection can only slow down the deterioration of the genetic information. That's all natural selection can do, just slow it down. Can't stop it. Go on. It should be very clear that our genome could not have arisen spontaneously. We know that scientifically. It will not happen. The only reasonable alternative to spontaneous genome is a what? Design genome. When you look at your DNA, the only conclusion there is it has to be designed. It screams out design and engineering. Yes. What it is our genome, our genetic damage results in aging, and aging causes shortening. Do we see that in Scripture? Yes, we do. Here's these two mice of the same age. This mouse has more mutations, so it's aging faster. You look at the Bible. Before the flood, man lived to be 900 years old. And then the flood happened, the water canopy collapsed, increase in mutations. What happens to aging? What we find in Scripture fits perfectly with what we see in science. Did you know that? Now, everybody comes from one man and one woman. Question is, where did Cain get his wife? He had a wife. Who was she? Sister. No problem. Because back in Cain's day, genes were pretty perfect. They could marry close relatives, not a problem. Abraham married his half-sister. That's a pretty close relative. Genes were still pretty good in Abraham's time. By the time of Moses, mutations in their bodies reached a level where it's no longer feasible to marry a close relative. Because if we would marry close relatives today, what would happen? Birth defects. I knew that. I dealt with farming. If I did too much interbreeding with my livestock, you know what would show up? Birth defects, diseases, death. We're not getting better, people. We're getting worse. What does the Bible say? We're not getting better, we're getting worse. What does evolution say? We're getting better. What? That doesn't fit with science. That's why I call evolution pseudoscience, because it doesn't fit with what we observe at all. And what time do I have to quit this hour?
10 till.
10 till. Okay, thank you. I forgot to ask that question before I started. Okay, good. And we're not getting very far. We got these long-winded speakers. Just, man. So this increase of new genetic information to mutations that get from amoebas to man is all false. That's all been scientifically debunked. We know that through science. I deal with science. I don't deal with speculation. This is all built on speculation. Let's go with species. I like this one. Evolution is defined as a change in species over time. Well, the question is, what's a species? A species is a group of organisms that share similar characteristics and can be interbreed with one another to produce fertile offspring. Okay, let's take a look at that. Change in species over time is not Darwinian evolution, is it? If finches stay finches, is that Darwinian evolution? What's Darwinian evolution? Any of you know? When finches change into something that's completely not a finch, that is Darwinian evolution. Are you all with me? This is what they have to demonstrate. If they cannot demonstrate that, that's a false philosophy. Okay? Change in kind over time, or family type over time, that's macro, that's Darwinian evolution. So you have to change the kind. Dogs change into something that is no longer a dog. That's Darwinian evolution. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth is changing species over time. That's changing species right there. The Bible predicted changing species 6,000 years ago. Darwin was ignorant of this scientific knowledge in Genesis chapter 1. Did you know that? They were ignorant of it. Dogs stay dogs, but they change a little to fit their environment. We know that. This is biblical and scientific. Variations are species within the kind. That's micro. That's all scientific and biblical right there. Let's take a look at this. We're all familiar with dogs, right? We got the wolf and the domestic dog. Those are subspecies. Now, they have crossed coyotes with dogs. They've crossed coyotes with wolves. They've crossed wolves with dogs. They've crossed jackals with domestic dogs. And guess what you always get? Dogs. We got big dogs and little dogs. Now, can this dog breed with that dog? No. I see some problems here. I used to breed animals. There's a big problem there. Yeah, and they demonstrated. They don't breed. Yeah, because of the difference in sizes. We're pushing the limit of dog genes. But you breed this dog to get smaller, this dog to get larger, now you can do some interbreeding. But they're still all what? Dogs. This is all biblical. This is not evolution at all. Yeah, this is the DNA cold barrier. We see that. Dogs always stay dogs. Everything reproduces after their family. Now here we have we don't see the kind in the dog classification. We have kingdom, phylum, class, order, suborder, family, genus, species, and subspecies. So where does kind fit in with this? Well, kind fits in with the dog family or dog genus in there. Depends on what we're talking about. You all with me so far? Making sense? Okay. Species change. We know this changes, but this does not change. Yes. We got wolves. We got coyotes. We got foxes. We got jackals. We got dingoes. We got raccoon dogs. This is not a raccoon, it's a dog. We got African wild dogs. We got domestic dogs. But they're still all what? Through natural selection and adaptation, some of the dogs adapted to live in the Arctic. So they became Arctic foxes. Now if you take a dingo and throw it in the Arctic fox, where the Arctic fox lives, can it survive? No. It's got the wrong kind of dog genes. But they're still all what? Dogs. If you breed an Arctic fox with an Arctic fox, guess what you're always going to get? Arctic fox, because now we have more of a purebred. We lost a lot of dog genetics. You won't get a Chihuahua. Okay? You see what I mean? Chihuahuas won't do very good up in the Arctic. No, wrong dog genes. No. This is what we call gene depletion. We're losing variation of genes. They're less likely to change through natural selection. And we got rabbits. Rabbits were very obedient to be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. We got rabbits with little ears. We got rabbits with big ears. We got rabbits with middle-sized ears. We got rabbits with floppy ears and hairy ears. We got all kinds of rabbits, but they're still all what? Rabbits. Well, here we have, it's hard to see here. We got some glare here. This is right here we got a zonkey. Let's have donkey and have zebra. Most of the time they're sterile. Like this one's a horse and a zebra. That's a zorse. And here we have mules, and that's a cross between a donkey and a horse. But most mules are sterile. But now they discovered there are a few mules that are fertile. Interesting. We're pushing the limits of the horse kind. Sometimes when you're pushing the limits, they're hard to reproduce. But it doesn't mean they're not in the same kind. They're not changing the completely different kind. This is a science book down in Mexico. They understand. God did not make zebras and donkeys and domestic horses. He made the horse kind, and by separating out the genetics, you get zebras, donkeys, and horses. Are you all with me? This is nothing new. I dealt with this all the time. You get a hybrid pig, you can start separating out the genes, you get different variations of pigs, but you always get what? Pigs. If I didn't get pigs, I was in big trouble. Nobody would buy something that's not a pig. No. They crossed a whale with a dolphin, and they got a wolphin. That wolphin is fertile. So the dolphins and the porpoises and the whales are probably all at the same time. They're just being fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Then we had cattle. We worked with cattle. They crossed the bison with domestic cattle. These are the crosses right here. Here's one. This one's closer to the bison side. You can see it's mostly bison, but a little bit of Holstein or Charolais. Now, it took them about 15 years of reproducing a bison with domestic cattle to get a fertile offspring. About 15 years. So we're pushing the limits of the cattle kind. Are you all with me? Once they got a fertile offspring, now they can reproduce that with the domestic side or the bison side. But we were pushing the limits. It was hard to get that fertile offspring. But just because you don't get a fertile offspring doesn't mean it's not in the same kind. Now, across the yak with the bison, you got a yakalo. Across the Mexican cattle with the yak, and you got this feature right here. So the musk ox and the water buffalo and the yak and the bison and the rest, they're all in the same kind. They're just being fruitful and multiplied. And we got the cat kind. They cross the lion with a jaguar and got a jaguar. They cross the leopard with a lion, got a leopard. And they crossed lynx and bobcats, and there's the crosses right there. They crossed lions with tigers, and they got ligers. Now, most of the time they're sterile, but doesn't mean that they're not in the same kind. And here's a tiger. That's another cross between the lion and the tiger. But they don't do so well. It's just not a good cross. And ligers, when they cross the lion and tiger this way, ligers don't stop growing. They just keep growing. They get big. Wow, interesting. And they cross the domestic cat with a wild cat. So domestic cat, wild cats, jaguars, lions, tigers are all in the same kind. All what happened is through natural selection, tigers adapted to the jungles and the lions adapted to the savanna. But now when you cross a tiger with a tiger, what do you always get? Tigers. It's more of a purebred. You always get variations of tigers. I work with this all the time. That was my occupation. I didn't work tigers, I used to work with livestock. Interesting. You get all kinds of variations of tigers, but you don't get something else that's not a tiger. That's a loss of genetic information. That tiger is less likely to change into something else through natural selection. Yes. And then they crossed a llama with a camel and got a kama. They call this kama Rama. Interesting. This is from the Denver Museum of Natural History. Because bacteria reproduce rapidly, many mutations can appear in a short period of time. So bacteria evolve very quickly. I looked at that and I said, well, what do bacteria change into? If they evolve very rapidly, they must be evolving into something else. So what do bacteria evolve into? Bacteria. You got it. Bacteria always stay what? They've been studying bacteria, research on bacteria for decades. And guess what? Millions and millions of generations of bacteria. Guess what bacteria always stay? Bacteria. You know what they always do? They always be fruitful, multiply, and fill their environment. That's all they do. That is all biblical. That was in the Bible 6,000 years ago. Isn't that interesting? If you want to understand science, you've got to understand Scripture. I believe they go hand in hand. They really do. And every scientist actually used biblical principles. No scientists use evolutionary principles. Did you know that? They always use biblical principles. We talked about that already. Yeah. Interesting. Viruses. You know what viruses always stay? Viruses. Rhinoviruses mutate faster than anything because they have RNA. But they always stay viruses. They just change the outside coat. That's why you got to come up with more antibiotics or antibodies and so on. They're not even living creatures, as far as we know in science. They have a host. No new body parts, no new nothing. Genes are very complex. Genes can turn on and off. Like stick insects, they have genes they can turn on to make wings. Something changes in the environment, the next generation comes along, they don't like the wings, so they'll shut the genes off and they won't produce wings. Now, is this evolution? No. No new body parts, no new genes. It's just shutting genes on and turning them on. You know, you can do that too. Your body turns on genes and off, depending on, to adapt to different conditions. I used to live in Minnesota. I used to get minus 40 degrees below zero. Is that pretty cold? Yeah. When it come from summer where it's about 100 degrees and go into fall where it gets 50 degrees, it was cold. Then you get to December and January, it got to minus 40 degrees below zero, it was really cold. And then when it got to about 30, 40 degrees out there, it was really hot. It's short sleeves and shorts. I kid you not. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Again, talks about after his kind, goes on after his kind, after their kind, after his kind. It was, is this scientifically correct? It is. They have never observed anything other than this. Interesting. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. So creatures will reproduce after their kind, but they will change a little bit to fit their environment. Does that happen? Yes. That's all what I've taught you so far is scientific. Let's get to Darwin's finches. Darwin came to Galapagos Islands. He saw finches with big beaks. He saw finches with little beaks. He saw finches with small beaks. Because they had different change in beak sizes, he came to the conclusion that finches must evolve. He thought that if finches could change a little bit over a short time, over lots of years, finches could make what? Big changes. But is this evolution? When I look around this room, I see some big beaks and some little beaks. Does that mean those of us who have bigger noses are more evolved than those who have smaller noses? No, it's just different nose sizes. That's all we have here. They stayed finches. The small changes scientists observed will never bring about the big changes needed for macroevolution. Never. Take a look at this. There's about 14 species of finches on that island. They can all now basically reproduce with one another, have fertile offspring. That means they're not different species. They're all the same species, all at the same time. That's exactly right. Yes. And all these, so they came from a single species called an ancestral fish. Or a finch, not a fish, boy. So basically what it is some finches flew to Galapagos Islands, and these finches decided to be obedient to God's mandate, to be fruitful, multiply, and fill Galapagos Islands. That's all the finches did. They just adapted a different environment because of different genes. Everything that Darwin revealed in his research supported biblical principles. Did you know that? None of what he supported here supported Darwinian evolution. None. Nothing. Now with the new research going on there, do you know the finches they're afraid they're going to go extinct? They're not evolving into something else, they're going to go extinct. Because there's a parasite that's brought over to the islands that's killing off these young finches. So Darwin's theory, his research, his speculation, he speculated that things would change into something else. Are you with me? Speculate. I don't deal with speculation, I deal with science. Observational, repeatable, refutable evidence. All these different finches, they just adapted to different food sources, different environments, so they could develop those islands. That's all they did. Yes. Here, this is where the mistake is being made. Right here. Everpulse. Lizard test in Caribbean shows evolution can be fast. Well, let's take a look at the evolution. Right here's, we're going to take a look at that. The long-standing issue in biology is whether the small evolutionary changes, that's microevolution, this is biblical, sometimes noticed within species are the same as the giant shifts in kaleidoscope of the species that take place over millions of years. Or in biologist terms, whether microevolution is the same as macroevolution. Are they the same? No, they're two different things. This is biblical, this is observational, this is scientific. Millions of years? Can you observe things taking millions of years? Can scientists do research over millions of years? When you're talking about millions of years, you automatically stepped on the realm of science and you've come into the realm of speculation. Did you know that? They're speculating over millions of years, small changes will change into big changes. We never observed that. Yes. So what it is, this is not observational, it is all speculation. They're assuming microevolution plus millions of years, this is all blind religion, equals that creature will change into something else. Well, actually what happened in that experiment is this. There's a number of islands in Galapagos Islands. Or not Galapagos Islands, in the Caribbean. There's a number of islands. They didn't have any lizards on them. So they took some lizards and they put them on those islands. They left for a few years, they came back, and they discovered the lizards changed. Some had longer legs, some had shorter legs, some had longer tails, and so on. But they were still all what? All these lizards did was be fruitful, multiply, and fill these islands. That's all they did. All of it was biblical, all of it was scientific. They speculated that they could change into something else. Is that science? No. They always stayed lizards. Oh. Yeah. Darwin did not disprove the Bible. He confirmed the scientific information revealed in the Bible. Did you know what that? You know what he disproved? Charles Darwin disproved the pseudoscience of the Greek philosophers. The Greek philosophers, some of them were teaching, and the theologian compromisers. That's why I'm so against compromising the Bible with evolution. Because they did it in the past, it was a disaster, and we're doing it today. Some of the Greek philosophers taught the immutability of species, which means species do not change. So the whole thing of species do not change, they never came from the Bible, it came from the Greeks. And in Darwin's day, if you were scientific, you believed what the Greeks taught. So these theologians, they took the false teachings of the Greeks and added to the Scripture and taught that species do not change. Well, the Bible never teaches that, does it? This information came from the false theologians and the false science of the Greek philosophers. Darwin believed that, he was taught that, so he went to Galapagos Islands and he saw changes in finch peeps. That means the Bible must be wrong. Are you all with me? That's not what the Bible taught at all. We've got to be very careful not to add man's wisdom and his pseudoscience to the Bible. Otherwise, it turns out to be a disaster. We've got hundreds of years of research to support that. And the same thing's happening today. Who knows more, man or God? You make the decision. Who are you going to follow, man's wisdom or God's wisdom? You make the decision. I'm just here to help you out. So all Darwin refuted was the false teachings of the theologian compromisers with the Greek philosophers. That's all he disproved. He established the information, scientific information in the Bible. Yes. Yes. Again, small changes scientists observed were predicted in Genesis thousands of years ago. If Darwin would understand Genesis, he would never came up with this theory. Oh yeah, that's what the Bible says. That's what I found. Huh. I'm going to end with this note right here for this morning. Well, we're not getting very far, Pastor Kevin. We're oh man, this is bad news. Yeah. Okay. Who's the father of modern genetics? Anybody know? Any biologists here? Who's the father of modern genetics? Gregor Mendel. That's not true. I was taught Gregor Mendel is the father of genetics. He is not the father of modern genetics. If you want to understand who's the father of modern genetics, you've got to go to Genesis. Genesis chapter 1. It's in the genetics is Genesis chapter 1, but it's also in Genesis 30 and 31. Are you all familiar with Jacob's wages for raising Laban's sheep? Are you all familiar with that? I was reading Jacob and what he was doing. It was brilliant. What he was doing is what I was doing on the farm. Yes. This guy, he knew dominant recessive genes. He understood hybrids and purebreds. This guy understood all that. This guy was brilliant. That's about 4,000 years ago. Roughly, probably, that's a few thousand years before Gregor Mendel comes on the scene, right? This guy is brilliant. He understood. Some of that stuff, we need to study what Jacob was doing. You know, he used those sticks or whatever, put in the water. There's some scientific information there. We need to study that because we were doing some strange things with their pigs. And I'm thinking, this guy knows some information that we need to know. We need to study. What is he doing there? He's doing something. And it's very scientific. See, evolution doesn't help science out at all. We need to be studying, okay, what was Jacob doing? If we were studying the Bible, we'd be thousands of years ahead of our time and with genetics. You know, we've got 3,000 years we lost there. Wow. Because he already had that information that Gregor Mendel was teaching. Huh. Jacob is the father of modern genetics. Yeah, he knew God. That's because God knows everything about genetics. Yes, animals do not change, but they reproduce after their own time. I'd like to hit on that because that's exactly what we see. Now, let's quit right there. I think it's about time to take a break, right? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you guys are all encouraged to study your Bible, to read and study Genesis, especially. If you want to give an offering to Alpha Omega Institute Bridge, Alpha Omega Institute,